The latest online event organised by the Play Magnus group is in full swing. The Opera Euro Rapid is taking place. We're into day 2 already, and we're in the preliminary phase. So it's a 16-player round-robin tournament, and then that decides which 8 are going to go through into the knockout phase. And I want to show you a round 10 game between Magnus Carlsen playing white and Hikaru Nakamura. So these two, of course, have quite a history. Carlsen has a huge score against Nakamura in classical chess. In rapid, and this is a rapid play tournament, it's not quite so clear. Nakamura has scored a few good points against Carlsen. So here we've got a normal bishop f4 queen's gambit, and e3 is the standard move here. But instead of that, Carlsen hits out of the bishop straight away. Now this is a little bit unusual and I don't think particularly good. And here's why. Because black can strike out this pawn, which has to commit. And you can see that black is already generating play on the queen side when white has yet to develop. The king is still in the middle, so it's even a little bit dangerous for white. Now, Carlsen exchanged on d5. Still got to do something about that pawn, so he pushed forward. And here is the problem, that you see the c5 square is now available for that knight. And that gives black very good counterplay. That knight is a beautiful piece, controlling or looking at these squares anyway. Carlsen castles at a4. Excellent move. So the knight has the possibility to leap into the b3 square. And here I think if Carlsen wants to play steadily, he can play knight d4, covering b3, and then bishop f6. It's about equal. But Carlsen played more ambitiously. Bishop to e5. So he figures that bishop isn't doing that much on this diagonal, so he points it in this direction towards the king side. But it's quite time consuming. Knight b3, good move. Hits the rook. Rook can't come to the open file, so has to play to a2. Of course, the rook still needs to guard the a pawn as well. But not a beautiful square for the rook. Bishop e6, good move. Developing the bishop, and Carlsen attacks it straight away. Of course, if knight takes knight, then that would solve a lot of white's problems. The knight gone, bishop stands beautifully here. But no, of course, black is not going to do that. Bishop d6, excellent move. Carlsen grabs the bishop. And here, probably the best that white has is just to keep things under control and exchange bishops. But Carlsen plays very ambitiously here. He puts the bishop back on b2. Now, I understand why he would want to preserve the two bishops. But how is the rook feeling on a2 once the bishop comes back to b2? This is pretty ugly. Not only that, that bishop looks pretty menacing, pointing at h2. So Carlsen's move bishop b2 is very brave. One might say perhaps a little foolish. But let's see. Rook c8, good move. Well, if white is unable to move the rook to the open file, then black can claim it. Why not? g3, okay, that must have been a relief to Carlsen to block out that bishop. Queen d7, connecting the rooks, we like that. Bishop d3, right, so this is what Carlsen has in mind. He's looking at those wonderful bishops pointing towards the king side and hoping that something will land. And indeed, Queen h5 is on the cards here for white. And that's why Nakamura played Queen f7. I think he could just launch forward with e5 there. But anyway, queen f7, it's a practical move. It's also looking down at f2, although that's guard at the moment, of course. e4. So Carlsen is striking out. And now here, Nakamura plays what looks like such a natural move. Bishop c5 pointing at f2. But I think d4 is very powerful. Now, it seems a little counterintuitive because it sort of makes that bishop look a little bit better. But actually, it shuts out that bishop on b2. And I think black is doing very well in that position. Anyway, bishop c5, also not bad for black. But after that, well, and this next move, bishop e5, making sure the bishop doesn't get locked in, then Carlsen could breathe a little bit more easily. Not only that, once the bishop has moved, then this rook enters the game. At the moment it's protecting f2, but it might arrive on c2 or e2. Rook e8, attacking the bishop. I mean, Nakamura's forces do look very well placed, very harmoniously placed, I have to say. Yes, these bishops are beautiful, but black looks fine here. Bishop f4, the bishop retreated. h6. Round about this stage, well, Carlsen is, you know, he's got what he wants, basically. He's playing with those bishops, and there is some pressure on the king side. Nevertheless, black is holding firm here. And h4 is an ambitious move, maybe not a good move, because h5, I think that's an easy move to overlook. h5 obviously attacking the queen, and the queen goes back. And now, well, this is looking very dangerous indeed for white. King g2 steps out of the bishop's diagonal. Around about this stage, Carlsen had around 30 seconds. Nakamura, I think it was something like 2.5, 3 minutes. So Nakamura had a time advantage and a lot of pressure. And I was really surprised at Nakamura's next move. He played g6, which is kind of a solid move. Protects the h-pawn in case the queen wants to move away. Shuts out that bishop. Well, that's all very well. But I was amazed that he didn't seize the moment to sacrifice rook for bishop here. And then bring the knight back in the middle. That knight was performing a good function on b3, controlling c1, looking at some important squares. But now it needs to come back towards the king side, particularly when the pawns have been split like this. The king is a bit open. That knight can bounce around here. Now, in fact, it's still not completely clear. White, with best play, should be able to hold this position. Maybe you just have to sack back here. But, you know, that's not an easy position to play when your king is a little bit exposed. Anyway, g6 played by Nakamura. And I'm sure with relief, Carlsen moved that bishop away, knocking the rook away from the f-file. And then he knocked the second rook away from the f-file. So that just kind of relieved the pressure. And although the rooks are doubled on the e-file, well, in fact, you can see, look at these squares. They're all covered. The entry squares are covered by white's pieces. So I'm not surprised Carlsen was keen to push the rooks away to the e-file and away from the f-file. And here, well, again, you know, time was looking like the crucial factor here. And Nakamura had something like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. And Carlsen was down to something like 20 seconds. They get 10 seconds increment each time they make a move. But, you know, it's not a great deal of time. And Carlsen was under real pressure here in such a tricky position. he played bishop c2, expecting Nakamura to play knight d4, and he said that he was prepared to repeat the position and probably just make a draw. You know, not easy to play this position when you've got so little time. So bishop c2 just played, but instead of moving the knight back to d4, Nakamura seized the moment. He seized his chance. He thought he had a crushing move. Rook e1. If that's taken, then the queen plunges in. Check. And then there's the potential to take here. Well, it looks like White's king is in trouble. But after rook e1, after precisely 3 seconds thought, well, instantly basically, Carlsen snapped back with bishop takes g6. Shocker! Absolute shocker. And Nakamura couldn't believe it. He had completely overlooked this. He had fallen hook, line and sinker for the trap. She was shaking his head. He was cursing to himself. He was spinning in his chair. But there's nothing that Black can do here. In fact, Nakamura, after agonizing for about a minute, resigned the game. Okay, let's see why. Why did Nakamura resign here? Well, first of all, let's see what happens if this bishop is taken. Queen takes. Now rook takes, and well, there's absolutely no threat to f2 at all, as the queen has been moved away in any case. The rook defends. And in this position, well, White is a rook for a knight ahead and a pawn as well, and well, it's a simple technical win. Black's king is also too exposed. So let's come back here. Bishop takes g6 just played. Fine. What about taking the queen? Rook takes queen. We take Black's queen with check. Crucial. And then we take the rook. And once again, White is an exchange ahead. A rook for a knight ahead. And a pawn as well. For Carlsen, it's a simple technical win. And finally, what about if we just move the queen? Well, if queen e6, at least it protects the rook, then queen takes h5, threatening a huge check on h7, as well as the rook here. And Black has absolutely no defense in that position. It is hopeless, absolutely hopeless. So there we go. That is why Nakamura resigned. And what a shocker. He fell for Carlsen's trap. And that was that. So that meant at the end of day 2, Carlsen was leading the tournament with 7 out of 10. Nakamura was on 50%. Now, he's on the edge. It could be if Nakamura has a bad day, bad third day tomorrow, he might not qualify for the knockout phase. Let's see. It's going to be a big final 5 rounds tomorrow on day 3. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting us via Patreon or PayPal. Thanks for watching.